Hi, folks. I don't know if this is hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how, and it's a topical subject, how governments harass and crush private citizens who have committed no crime. Very important to understand that, who have committed no crime. Now, the vast resources of government through their courts and the public servants, the law enforcement agencies, in the United States like FBI or CIA or the Justice Department generally, and in other countries, the various law enforcement departments in, say, Britain or Australia or Canada or whatever. So what we're seeing now, and we can see it in the US, is, say, harassment of all people that worked for, with, or support Donald Trump. Now, there is clearly and unmistakably a concerted, coordinated campaign by the various organs of the Justice Department to pursue and crush private citizens. And I'll use sort of an early example of General Mike Flynn. Now, quite apart from the fact he was deceived, in my view, from the fact that he was deceived, and whether or not he played it sensibly or not, that's a separate matter. But the guy who'd committed no crime, he'd committed no wrongdoing, was targeted. And once you're targeted and they come after you, it's very hard to escape from it. Now, you need to be very savvy and or very rich, preferably both. General Flynn was he was doing all right, but he was hardly a rich man. So he was driven to, as I understand it, within a whisker of bankruptcy. Had to sell up his property and so on to fight the legal bills. Now, the government has vast resources, so they can dance you around and run you around and drag you through all sorts of courts and hearings and so on, which are quite expensive to defend, and that means that they can crush you at any time they choose financially. So that General Flynn is not a young man, and all the things that he'd worked for during his life, and his retirement, the house he was planning or intending to retire in, a lot of that was, or if not all of it, was gone, taken away. And again, he was an innocent man. He'd committed no wrongdoing. But once they come after you, they can sort of vector various forces and institutions and use them to effectively entrap you, so they can get you for looking sideways on a Sunday, and use that as a pretext to continue an endless pursuit of you and drag you through endless court hearings and so on. So I'm having a look in this essay about how governments, corrupt, totalitarian, ideologically driven governments, such as we see all over the West today, how governments harass and bankrupt private citizens. For example, if you oppose the globalist project, they'll come after you. But if you do, say, a climate change lockdown, creating absolute havoc in the city, if you get arrested at all, the courts will let you out with maybe a $50 fine, and no charge recorded on your record. So this is the difference. This is the level of ideological corruption that we're seeing all over the West today. It's not just in the United States. Every Western country that's infected with a pro-globalist government and World Economic Forum stooges and flunkies and so on. So the governments use a variety of methods to crush private citizens for purely ideological reasons. Remember, these citizens have committed no crime. Now, an example I'm using here is a man going through the very ideological, as I think we all know, divorce courts. Now, he's getting divorced. He has two children, or thought he did, but they're not biologically related to him. He thinks they are, but they're not. But he doesn't know they're not. Now, his ex-wife has told all the court officials, the lawyer, even the man's lawyer knows. So everybody, everybody involved in this whole saga knows that he's not the biological parent, but they've all sworn to secrecy. They've all decided, for ideological reasons, to not tell him. Now, the reason, there are a number of reasons for this, ideological sort of being primary among them, but from a more practical viewpoint, which is well down their list of important points, that the actual biological contributor to the children is an itinerant sort of labourer type guy, and he's not got any consistent income. He's out of work most of the time, and living on government benefits, all that sort of stuff. And he's not going to be able to pay. He's just not worth chasing. They're just not going to get anything. He owns nothing. He earns nothing. He's no point in chasing him. Whereas the guy who's being duped here is hardworking, conscientious, high-income earning guy who's never been out of work a day in his life, and he's the one that they're so they want him to pay now. So they want to get as much money as they can out of him, and because he's like a straight white male, they're quite happy that he should suffer for being that, and so the money they're taking from is payback, punishment, the penalty for being a straight white male. Now, remember, most of the people in the divorce court system are activists, they're gender studies, lesbians, and so on. But more than that, if not as much as that, he's the straight white male that is also the main enemy of the globalists, and also an enemy of changing the family structure. And he's just viewed ideologically as the enemy that must be crushed. White supremacy, fascism, Hitler! So the ideological taxpayer-funded court knows the children have no biological relationship to him, as to all the court operatives. But all the lawyers are conspiring. That means his own lawyer is conspiring against him. His own lawyer is in on the game. So he's paying this lawyer, to represent him, but he's in fact selling him out. But he doesn't know this at this stage. The mother is told, for God's sake, don't tell him. Don't say anything to him. Keep it a secret from him. And just keep on getting that money off him, and so on. Now, this alone is illegal. This conspiracy to defraud, the conspiracy to pervert the course of justice in a divorce court, but nonetheless, conspiracy to conceal evidence. These are serious charges in a court. People go to prison for this sort of stuff. I mean, look at what they went after General Mike Flynn for, and out of the Trump administration, lying to the FBI when they set him up for an entrapment gig. Whereas this is very serious. A number of people all conspiring to conceal evidence and commit perjury in a court of law. Now, the ideological machine of the thing wants to provide super generously for the woman, because they figure, so if they front load it and take as much money from him as quickly as they possibly can, so they're levying all these crazy fines against him. He misses. They create this child support amount of money he's supposed to owe. They don't tell him, he doesn't know. Then they have another court case without him even knowing it, and then they fine him $50,000 for not paying something he didn't know he had to pay, or was due to pay, or obligated to pay. So they're using all these scam tactics to build up debt that he's supposed to pay, but again, he knows nothing about it. It's all done through ideological processes, and they can do things like call him 5 minutes before a court hearing takes place, or even call him on the phone and say that the court hearing is about to start, but in fact the court hearing ended an hour ago. I mean, so he can't make it there. So then they can look. So, well, you didn't make it to court, and by the way, buddy, you're in contempt. So all these scammy tactics and tricks are used, but it's to crush him. Look, pay the fucking money we want, shut the fuck up, and go away. Stop opposing us. Stop questioning us. Stop asking questions. This is an example of how do it. So they figure that sooner or later he's going to work out the biology of that he's not biologically related to what he thought were his children. So they figure he's going to work it out pretty soon. So they want to get as much from him as quickly as they can. Now he's fighting back because they want such a generous. They're being so generous to the woman. He's fighting back. He said, "Well, why are you being this generous? Why am I being singled out?" And so he's fighting back. Now he's not without resources. He's not a poor guy, not rich either, but he's capable of fighting back. But they don't want that. They're outraged that he's questioning them and he's poking around and he's starting to really ask questions and they're worried that he's going to work out what's going on. So they want to crush him quickly, crush him decisively, crush the fuck out of him, and illegitimately using the power of the state to do it for ideological reasons. And this is what they do. This is how they're crushing in a method, the methodology. This is how they're crushing the Trump supporters. Because the clock's ticking. He's spending shitloads on legal fees. And remember, again, he's the only one who doesn't know. Everyone else involved in this saga is trotting him endlessly around the circuit, simply to bleed him of all resources. So they do other things, like they summons him to court very dramatically, like they'll serve summon. They could call him and say there's a court hearing or send him a letter or something like that. No. They have to do it with maximum drama, humiliate him in his workplace. So you have summons servers walking into the office and serving him with summonses and waiting for him outside where he lives. They'll hide in the driveway and jump out and serve him with a summons. Again, they could have called him or sent a letter or anything. They could have done anything, but no, they have to do the big drama. Now, on top of that, of course, summons servers cost money. So they'll force him to pay for that, to pay for his own humiliation, which they're coordinating and arranging and deciding upon. Now, so they summons him to the court, and then they'll keep him and his lawyer waiting outside the court for a day. Then they come back the next day because that's when maybe the case will be on. There's always other cases that are more important jumping in front of his. Isn't that strange how they're able to do it? So they'll keep him outside the court for 3 days. And that's many thousands of dollars now of legal fees he's racking up and still not getting a result. They're doing this on purpose, again, just to crush him and make sure he's being bled of all money. Because as he sees the money disappearing, he's going, I can't do this anymore. I better just stop and give them whatever they want. And that's, of course, the outcome that they're looking for here. Now, other things they do is, I mentioned a moment ago, they'll tell him that they're not going to hear the case today. You can go home. We're not going to hear the case today. But then they'll call him and say later on in the afternoon, they'll call him and say, look, we've got someone's cancelled or something's happening. We've now got the judge has got some time, but it's 30 minutes before the court closes. You've got to get back here now, and we'll hear him. It's maybe a directions hearing or something like that. So he's got 30, but he can't make it there in that time. So then, well, you didn't make it. You came late. We called you and you didn't make it. It's on you. It's your fault. You brought it on yourself. And he'll get verbaled and finger wagged by the judge. The judge will scream at him in the court and even throw his documents on the floor. Maximum humiliation there for him. And then they'll say he's got to wait another month or 2 months before the next hearing, but various other documents have to be filed. All of these have filing fees. All of these come with costs, lawyers' time, and so on. Now, quasi-arbitration meetings are arranged. This technically doesn't cost anything, but his time there again, he can be waiting for a while outside. Now, the arbitrators, if you can even call them that, they're nearly all gender studies, lesbian activists, with hardly any exceptions. And if they're not, lesbians, they're gender studies activists who believe that the family is evil and white men are evil. They're all Nazis and fascists. So it doesn't, I guess, necessarily matter. These arbitration sessions are supposed to be confidential, but these people also have the power to order psychological evaluations, which cost many thousands of dollars. They're handed out to very reliable, trusted ideological fanatics who will universally declare that the man is an evil oppressor and she's a helpless victim. But he has to pay for all that. Sometimes they say she has to pay half, but then her lawyer files to the court and says she can't afford it, make him pay. That's fine, done deal. He's going to have to pay. In these sessions, the man's constantly accused of being a violent, fascist Nazi thug. And so he's constantly threatened with bringing security into the room, which may be a couple of heavy dudes, and this is done purely to intimidate him. And if he points out that maybe she's violent, done this, they'll just laugh in his face and call security anyway. Again, all part of the overall intimidation and crushing process. At the last minute, they can even change the location of these meetings or the time. Now they've told the mother, the woman, the previous day that the meeting, but they wait until a few minutes before the meeting to tell him. So she knows already. She knows from the day before that the meeting time has changed, but they'll wait till he's on the road and driving there and about to walk in the front door, and then they'll call him and tell him. Again, all part of the crushing, the intimidation, and trying to frustrate him and exasperate him to the maximum level. They're obviously doing it on purpose and doing it again just to crush him. Judges are when it gets into the front of the judges, are openly hostile to him, accepting her unsupported allegations as fact, while placing him under an impossibly high burden of proof that no one could meet, and threatening him with fines for contempt of court on the tiniest issue, whereas she can openly commit perjury that can be proven, and yet receives not even a reprimand. The judge will openly scream at him and dress him down, openly humiliate him in court, and the court operatives are invited to join in with the sneering and jeering and the laughing. Again, all just to crush him for daring to defy them. Now, in this instance, he noticed a similarity in the pattern of how he was being treated to another guy who he'd accidentally come across, who also found out that he had no biological relationship to his children. So this guy did a DNA test, and the results came back, of course, that he had no biological relationship to what he thought had been his children. So he now knows. Previously, he didn't know, so he now knows. So he produced this. He's still unaware that they've all deceived him and operated in concert to do it. He's now suspicious of that, but he just can't believe that could happen, not in an advanced Western rule of law, due legal process, democratic Western country. He just can't believe it. And you can sort of see it there, but he says, no, I just can't believe this is happening. The politicians would never allow it, but they will. They're now controlled by the globalists, and this is part of the crushing process. And so they are allowing it, encouraging it, and funding it, as we see today with the way they pursue Trump supporters in the United States. So he produced the evidence in court, and everybody was outraged. I mean, they began treating him, disgustingly, even worse than they had before, simply because he'd kept on resisting, he kept on asking questions, he kept on poking around, and what had happened was he'd actually stopped using a lawyer. He was now representing himself. So their means of crushing him by bleeding him dry, through legal fees, they'd lost that, and that irritated them to the absolute max. And they thought, well, how else can we crush this guy? We can't bleed him now because he's representing himself. Now, when he produced the evidence that he wasn't the biological parent, they just simply the judge just ruled the evidence as inadmissible. Didn't say why, just did it. It's inadmissible. Now, you can't do that in a proper court of law, one that relies on facts and evidence. But this is an ideological court, and they can do that and do it. So there was no penalty for the woman or the others that had conspired to defraud him. But it was all, he was evil. He was a fucking fascist Nazi Hitler because he dared to ask the questions and dared to discover the truth. And that's not acceptable in an ideological situation. But again, the harassing phone calls. So, I could see this guy as they continued at him and just went on and on and on at him, and through all sorts of means. And you could see him just declining to the point where he was close to being a nervous wreck. But they didn't let up. They kept at him, didn't stop. As he pointed out to me once, he couldn't go for a day without a threatening letter, a court summons, harassing phone call, bailiffs trying to serve summonses on him. Now that, no matter how tough you are, unless you're very, very rich, nobody can tolerate that sort of, no one can put up with that. It will crush anybody, and does. And this is what they're trying to do, and using, if not exactly those methods, very, very close to them, a very close approximation of them. This is what they're using, and the methods they're using to harass private citizens. I mean, another example is when this man discovered the conspiracy to commit perjury in court, which he managed to get some documents to prove. He went to the federal law enforcement authorities, because it was a federal court in this particular jurisdiction. He went to the federal law enforcement authorities and showed them the evidence. And you know what they did instead of investigating the thing, the next time he went to the next time he went to the court for a hearing, two armed federal officers followed him around the entire time. They couldn't investigate the perjury and the conspiracy to commit perjury. Instead, two armed federal officers followed this guy around into the courtroom, standing outside the toilets, the whole thing. Armed federal officers followed him around. Can you believe it? But this is what's happening in the West today, and these are the methods they use to crush opposition and questions. You've been with Tassus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream.